Welcome back to another explainer. Today we're tearing down the engine of an absolute heavyweight in the Indian defense sector, Paris Defense and Space Technologies. Now, if you track defense and aerospace, you've definitely seen their name. They're literally everywhere, from naval submarine periscopes all the way up to cutting-edge space optics. But how exactly does one company juggle such a massive, highly complex tech portfolio? And more importantly, what do the hard financials beneath all that shiny tech actually look like? Well, that's exactly what we're going to unpack together today.
To keep things moving, here's our roadmap. We'll start with their role as India's premier defense innovator, then pivot into their specific tech verticals, optics, space, and aviation, followed by drones and future tech. Finally, we'll ground all these engineering marvels in the actual data, checking out their financial growth, their massive order book, and of course, the market realities and risks they're facing right now.
So, Part 1. India's premier defense innovator, the Make in India giant.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Before we start geeking out over rockets and lasers, we've got to understand the DNA of this company. Safeguarding front lines with indigenous tech, that is their entire playbook. We're starting here because Paris, well, they aren't some flashy new startup. We are talking about over 4 decades, 40 years, of hardcore, specialized technical experience. They've really positioned themselves as a formidable domestic powerhouse for heavy defense engineering, building the actual physical infrastructure that modern militaries completely rely on.
And when you look at their market position, the breadth of their influence is wild. Their client list honestly reads like a who's who of aerospace heavyweights. We're talking DRDO, ISO, Tata, L&T. But here's the kicker. They aren't just a local player. For some highly specific defense products, they are literally the sole manufacturer in the entire Asia-Pacific region. Plus, they're actively exporting to heavy hitters like Israel, Singapore, and the US. Their ultimate goal? To be India's undisputed #1 in high-end optical systems and anti-drone tech.
Which brings us to Part 2, optics, space, and aviation beyond the atmosphere.
Now, this perfectly captures the sheer crazy spectrum of what they actually build. On one hand, we've got their space optics. They're actually the only Indian private company developing a hyperspectral camera for defense and space intended to be launched jointly by DRDO and SRO. And then, on the total opposite end of the spectrum, literally underwater, they're delivering submarine periscopes for the Navy, one every 3 months actually. From the crushing depths of the ocean to the absolute vacuum of space, their optics are right there.
But look, hardware is totally useless without a brain, right? Which brings us to a massively strategic move, OSAT, or Outsourced Semiconductor Assembly and Testing. Paris is currently setting up a state-of-the-art domestic hub for advanced semiconductor packaging. By doing this chiplet integration right at home, they're plugging directly into defense, high-performance computing, and networking. It's a huge leap forward for India's independent semiconductor ecosystem.
Okay, so you have these advanced electronics, but how do you protect them? Enter EMP, or electromagnetic pulse protection. Picture a massive, invisible burst of energy designed to instantly fry critical circuitry. Scary thought. Well, Paris is the only Indian company offering turnkey, certified, and field-proven EMP protection. They build these massive anechoic chambers to shield essential military hardware from these very modern threats.
Moving on to Section 3, Drones and Future Tech, Navigating Tomorrow's Threats.
The modern battlefield is changing fast, largely thanks to unmanned aerial vehicles. And Paris has this really fascinating duality in their portfolio. It's honestly like a high-tech game of cat and mouse. On the defensive side, you've got their mobile ground-based anti-drone radars, software-defined radios, and smart anti-jamming tech to fend off hostile swarms. But on the offensive side, they're actively developing high-power laser defense systems to literally zap hostile drones, missiles, and aircraft right out of the sky.
And get this, they aren't just fighting drones, they're building next-gen ones too. They're actually introducing India's first ready-to-fly hydrogen-powered drones. Through a major partnership with Israel's Heaven Drones, they are pulling off a mind-blowing 12+ hours of flight endurance, carrying over 22 kilograms of payload. Toss in their joint venture with Contrap, another Israeli giant, to manufacture world-class electro-optic and infrared systems domestically, and you can see how they're strategically bringing top-tier global tech straight into the domestic market.
Right, Section 4, Financial Growth and Orders, the numbers behind the tech.
We've seen the shiny engineering, but how does all this actually translate into cold, hard cash? Well, what's really interesting here is the aggressive upward trajectory. Look at that climb, from 253.5 crores in fiscal year 24, jumping to roughly 364 crore in FY25, and hitting an estimated 476 crore by FY26. That is a compound annual growth rate that proves they aren't just innovating, they are executing beautifully on these massive defense contracts.
And that momentum? It doesn't look like it's slowing down anytime soon. Check out this number, 986 crore. That is their closing order book backlog as of March 2026. For a company this size, having nearly 1,000 crore locked in means heavy, reliable revenue visibility for the future. The demand for their hyper-specialized gear is absolutely there.
And management is clearly feeling the momentum too. They've stated they aim to grow revenues by 30 to 40% while maintaining or even bettering their profitability. And that highly optimistic guidance is backed up by recent fundamental growth. I mean, their profit after tax practically doubled between FY23 and FY24, going from about 30 crore to over 61 crore. The profit engine is, without a doubt, running hot.
Finally, Section 5, Market Realities and Risks, the ground truth. Look, innovation and rocketing revenues are great, but to keep this explainer totally objective, we have to talk about the risks. Let's break down their recent evaluation by Crystal Ratings, which reaffirmed them at an A-. On the plus side, Crystal notes their strong market position, diverse portfolio, and a very healthy adjusted net worth of over 580 crore. But they also explicitly point out the weaknesses. This is fundamentally a tender-based business. Government contracts can be notoriously volatile. Plus, their operations are intensely working capital heavy.
So, what does working capital heavy actually mean in the real world? Look at this metric, 500 to 520 days of gross current assets. Essentially, the company struggles with having a ton of cash tied up for long periods. And it makes sense, right? Building a submarine, periscope, or a space-grade camera takes a long time. Add in the fact that dealing with government bodies often means painfully slow payments, and you can see why managing cash flow efficiency is a massive, constant hurdle for them.
Which brings us to the valuation, 132. That was their price-to-earnings ratio at the time of these reports. Neutrally speaking, after the stock surged roughly 70% over the past year, the market has already priced in a lot of their future growth. A P/E ratio of 132 is widely considered quite expensive. In plain terms, investors are paying a hefty premium today, banking heavily on the profits of tomorrow.
So, where does that leave us? We've seen the brilliant technological leaps, the critical defense applications, and that bulging 986 crore order book. But we've also looked at the stretched working capital and the stark reality of a 132 P/E ratio. So, with soaring valuations but a massive backlog, is Paris Defense's rapid ascent actually sustainable? That is the ultimate tension here. A brilliant engineering firm navigating the intense financial gravity of the defense market. Thanks so much for joining me today. I hope this deep dive gave you the full picture. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.